Mr. Moore's math class! Good afternoon, guys, and welcome to Mr. Moore's online flip classroom. That's right, guys, I'm extremely excited today because we're going to learn all about how to long divide polynomials. And this is a bit of a difficult skill, so it's really important that you stay focused throughout the lesson, have a pen and paper so you can write down some notes, and let's get stuck straight into it. Now, did you go and grab a piece of paper and a pen? Because I'm telling you now that this process is pretty involved. So if you don't have it yet, make sure you press pause and go and grab one. Let's do that. Excellent. So if you've just gone and collected a piece of paper and a pen, welcome back. If you already have one on you, that is fantastic. I'm very happy to hear that because you should always have it when you're watching these videos. Now, we're going to have a look at some long division of polynomials, but before we do that, I'm just going to show you a little bit of a dream that I had the other day that was quite weird, but sort of related. So let's check it out.
Well, man, what just happened? Where am I? I better go find someone that I know. Oh, wait a second, Jerry, is that you?
Well, hey there, Tom. How you doing?
Whoa, Jerry, man, what happened to you? You're like so old right now.
Well, you're right, Tom. It's because you fell asleep for a number of years and I had to come down here and get some money so I can pay out rent.
Oh, man, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to do that to you. So what have you been doing the whole time you're down here anyway?
Well, you see, Tom, I've just been long divided polynomials.
Oh, man, that sounds so exciting. You must love it, right?
Well, it was exciting, but then it was just the same old stuff just over and over again.
Oh, what do you mean, Jerry?
Well, you see, Tom, all I ever do is I divide, then I multiply, subtract, and drag. It's just the same thing over and over, the same process, just again and again. Dividing, multiplying, subtracting, and dragging. Dividing, multiplying, subtracting, and dragging. Dividing, multiplying, subtracting, and dragging. That's all it ever is. It's not that exciting.
Divide, multiply, subtract, and drag? I wonder what all of that's meant to mean.
Well, Tom, it's funny that you ask because this is the exact process that you need to follow in order to be able to long divide polynomials. But before we get too far into it, let's have a look at the three different forms in which you may be asked a question, that is, divide the following polynomials. So for example, they can be written as a fraction like you can see here, or they can be written as a polynomial written in brackets divided by a linear factor, or they can be written in the third way, which you're about to see. Now, whenever we perform long division of polynomials, this is how we want our working out to look to start off with. And if you're watching the animation, this is demonstrating how to convert the top two forms into the appropriate format for our working out. Now, as you can see, this question is asking us to divide the polynomial x cubed plus 3x squared minus 5x plus 7 by the linear factor x minus 2. Now, as you watch this, you may discover, just like many other people, that there's a fair bit that goes on when we long divide polynomials. Now, I recommend that you watch this video maybe a few times over, just so you can understand the process involved. When you actually get the hang of it, you realise there's no more than just 4 simple steps. And these are divide, multiply, subtract, and drag. And then you go around and complete the same process over and over again until you have fully divided the whole polynomial. So looking at the problem that we've been faced with, we want to divide x cubed plus 3x squared minus 5x plus 7 by x minus 2. Now the very first step is to divide. That is, we divide the x cubed by the x. And this gets us x squared. Now you need to write this x squared directly above the 3x squared. Now the reason we get x squared is because we can write x cubed divided by x, as you can see here. Now x cubed can be written as x times x times x, and when we divide this by x, two of the x's will cancel out. This will leave us with x squared, and as you saw before, we write the x squared directly above the 3x squared. Now we know the process is divide, multiply, subtract, drag, so after divide we need to multiply. That is, we multiply the x squared on top by the x and the negative 2. And we write our solution out down here, that is x cubed minus 2x squared. Once again, we know the process is divide, multiply, subtract, drag, so we've divided and multiplied, now it's time to subtract. That is, we subtract x cubed minus 2x squared from x cubed plus 3x squared. Now x cubed minus x cubed will actually cancel out and give us 0, whilst 3x squared minus negative 2x squared, well, as you can see, the minus negative becomes a plus, which gets us 3x squared plus 2x squared, which is equal to 5x squared. Now, as you can see here, we write the 5x squared directly underneath the negative 2x squared. So divide, multiply, subtract and drag. That is right, it is time to drag. And what is it that we drag? Well, it's a negative 5x right down next to the 5x squared. And so now that we've dragged, it's now back to divide again. So we divide 5x squared by x. Now when we do this, one of the x's on the 5x squared will cancel out, leaving us with 5x. Now we write that just above the negative 5x, as you can see here. And so what comes after divide? Well, let's have a look at our little flowchart. Now as you can see, it's going to be multiply. So we need to multiply 5x by x and negative 2. That's going to get us 5x squared and negative 10x, and we write that down here as you can see. So if we've just multiplied, what is it now time for? That's right, you guessed it, it's subtract. So we write subtract and brackets around the bottom two terms, meaning that we need to subtract 5x squared minus 10x from 5x squared minus 5x. Now 5x squared minus 5x squared cancels out and will give us 0, whilst negative 5x minus negative 10x, well, the negative 10x is going to become a plus, as you can see here, and then what's going to happen is we're going to get negative 5x plus 10x, which is going to be 5x. Now we write the 5x underneath the negative 10x, remembering to keep all of the like terms in line. And after subtract, we drag. Now we drag the 7 all the way down next to the 5x, getting us 5x plus 7 down the bottom. And so now that we've completed the process of divide, multiply, subtract and drag, we're back around to divide again. That is, we divide 5x by x. Now the x's here will cancel out, leaving us with positive 5, and we write 5 all the way up next to the 5x, that is above the positive 7. And so now that we've just divided, it is now time to multiply. That is, we multiply 5 by x minus 2. So 5 times x is 5x, and 5 times negative 2 is negative 10. And we write that right down the bottom as you can see here. Now it's time for subtract once again. So we write some brackets around the bottom two terms, that is 5x minus 10. And we do 5x minus 5x. Now the 5x's will cancel out. And then we have 7 minus negative 10, while the minus negative becomes a plus. So we get 7 plus 10, which is equal to 17. And we write that directly underneath the negative 10, as you can see here. And so now that we've subtracted, the next step in the process is to drag. But wait a second, there's nothing that's above that we can drag down next to the 17. So what's that mean? Well, it means we drag the 17 all the way up to the very top. And what this becomes is our remainder. So essentially, when we divide x cubed plus 3x squared minus 5x plus 7 by x minus 2, our quotient becomes x squared plus 5x plus 5, and our remainder is 17. So as I explained before, and as you probably already noticed, there's a fair bit that's going on when we long divide polynomials. So I recommend you watch this video through a couple of times just to get the hang of what's going on. But when you do this, you'll notice that it's the same 4 steps just repeated over and over again. That is divide, multiply, subtract, and drag. Divide, multiply, subtract, and drag. That's all it ever is.
Excellent, guys. Now, as I said a couple of times during the animation, I highly recommend you watch it through a few times just to get your head around the whole process. Because once you've done that, you'll realize it's just the same 4 steps over and over again. And you're going to hear these things over and over again. That is divide, multiply, subtract, and drag. Divide, multiply, subtract, and drag. Alright guys, let's have a look at a couple of worked examples now of how to perform long division of polynomials on a piece of paper. Let's check it out.
Okay guys, so today we're learning all about how to apply long division to polynomials. Now, it's as easy as just remembering 4 steps. Whilst it might seem difficult at first, you just got to remember it's just 4 steps we need to remember. The first one being divide. So you always divide to start off with. Then what you do is you go through and you multiply. Then you subtract, and then you drag. So it's just divide, multiply, subtract, drag. Divide, multiply, subtract, drag. Same thing over and over again. So let's go through and do a quick worked example to demonstrate just this. Right, so the question says, find the quotient and remainder when 2x cubed plus x squared minus 4x plus 4 is divided by x minus 3. So the very first thing I need to do is make sure I write these two things here in the correct place. Now, it says when this one here is divided by this one here. So we'll write whatever it's being divided by out the front. So you're going to get x minus 3 here, and then you've got the original thing that's being divided is 2x cubed plus x squared minus 4x plus 4. Now the very first thing you need to check is to make sure that your powers of x actually goes down. So you've got x to the power of 3, x to the power of 2, x to the power of 1, and x to the power of 0, or just 4 left like that. Okay, now what we need to do, we've got that all in order, so what we've got to do is just follow the divide, multiply, subtract, and drag rule. Alright, so the divide one. Very first thing is we need to go the 2x cubed divided by the x. Now it's only ever the first one divided by the first part that you see here. So the 2x cubed divided by the x will get us 2x squared. Right, we've now done the divide, we come around here and it's multiply. So we go this one here, the top part, multiplied by both of these. So you go 2x squared multiplied by the x gets me 2x cubed. And the 2x squared multiplied the negative 3 gets me negative 6x squared. Right, notice that what I'm doing each time I write it is I keep my powers of x right underneath each other. So I've got x to the power of 3 written above and below here, and I've got my x squareds written all in line here. Just like you would with subtractions, where you keep your units in the same column and your tens in another column, etc. Alright, now what we need to do is, now that I've multiplied, I go through and I subtract part number 3. So I go through and I subtract. I put brackets around these two terms and I subtract them. Now 2x cubed minus 2x cubed will get me 0, so that's excellent. X squared minus negative 6x squared. Now, I recommend if you get a little bit stuck here, what you do is you write x squared minus negative 6x squared, because what you'll see is you'll get these two here will become a plus. So you're actually going to get 7x squared here. If you're confident though, then I'm happy for you just to go through and write x squared minus negative 6x squared will get you 7x squared. Just jump to that. Alright, so I've gone through and I've subtracted. Now this is the fun part, this is the part where you go and drag. So this negative 4x is going to come down here like so. Alright, now that I've completed all 4 steps, it's just the same thing again. So I go 7x squared divided by x. So my 7x squared divided by x is going to get me plus 7x. Now the 7x times the x will get me 7x squared. The 7x times the negative 3 will get me negative 21x. Alright, so I've gone through and I've multiplied. Now I go in and I subtract. So I subtract both terms now. So I go 7x squared minus 7x squared, you ripper at 0. Negative 4x minus negative 21x, well that's going to be 17x. And now I go through, now I've subtracted, and I go through and I drag. So I drag the very next term all the way down to here, so I go plus 4. Alright, I now divide once again, so I'm starting at my very top again, so I go divide, so I go 17x divided by x gets me 17. I then go 17 times x is 17x. 17 times negative 3, well that's going to be equal to negative 51. So I've multiplied, now I go through and I subtract. 17x minus 17x is actually equal to 0. And 4 minus negative 51 is equal to positive 55. So what I get here is I then go through, I've subtracted, I go up and I drag. So instead of dragging things down there because I've got nothing left to drag, I actually drag it up to the top. And what this here is my remainder. So remainder is 55. So as you can see, I've completed this process over and over again, remembering to drag the last one because that will actually be your remainder. So the answer to the question, find the quotient remainder when 2x cubed plus x squared minus 4x plus 4 is divided by x minus 3. What you're going to get is this here is your quotient. So your 2x squared plus 7x is your quotient. So you write that out. And your remainder is equal to 55, which is your last little bit here. And there you go, that's how you find your quotient and your remainder by performing long division on polynomials.